Okay.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next session at the Peralta Online Equity Conference. This one is called Equity in Hyflex Courses, Experiences and Lessons Learned with our speaker slash discussion facilitator, Sarah Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping details to share with you. One, this session is being recorded. As someone who talks about Hyflex will tell you, not all of us can be here in person or in real time. So we're excited for those of you who are watching the recording to join with us. We're going to have a Padlet board for you to generate ideas and share with all of us the things that pop up for you. Next, the captions, automated captions are running. If you want to turn them on for yourself, go down to the bottom of your Zoom window, select the closed caption button, and then choose show subtitle. And you can toggle that on and off as you wish. And last, we encourage comments and questions in the chat so that if you ideas that pop up for you, you want to share a resource that you know about a topic that's being presented or being discussed, definitely let us know about it. If you have questions that you want for our speaker, pop them in the chat as well. But I don't want to take much more time because we want to give as much of it as possible to Sarah. So Sarah, take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Kevin. And thank you, everybody. I didn't say hi to James. Hi to Doug. And Doug, I don't know how you pronounce your last name, but you have the same name as the graduate dean at my university. So, and we talked to Kathleen, Ava. I didn't hear you.
It's Koch, like the former mayor of New York.
Koch, okay. Yeah, he says Coke, so, but in writing you have the same name. So welcome everybody. And I'm glad you are, hi, Suryan, and whoever's in Buffalo. There's sunshine, that's good. Great. I hope you've been having a good day. There are so many interesting topics that are being explored, and I appreciate your being here. And so in the time that we have together, this is what I would like us to do. I'd like to get a little bit of an idea of who is in the virtual room. Unfortunately, I think we won't be able to introduce each of us ourselves orally, but as Kevin said, if you could put your name in the chat, that would be great. And it would be helpful for me to know whether people have taught Hyflex or not. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk a little bit about just what is Hyflex. Some of you probably are very well acquainted with this term. Some of you might not have any idea what it is. So we'll talk about that. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my own experiences. And Kevin and I were chatting before we got started, and I think that he has had very different experiences than I have. So I hope that you'll all be able to share your different experiences. The aim is to have a discussion. And so I will talk a little bit at the beginning to kind of frame what we could talk about, but then I'm going to ask you to work in small groups and brainstorm some ideas and to share them with each other. We're going to use Google Slides. I was mentioning to Kevin, I probably shouldn't tell you this. I've never used Google Slides this way, but I'm hoping that you all be patient. I think it'll work. And if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. And then we'll talk as a whole group. And then I'd like just to wrap up by all of us reflecting on things that we have learned from each other. So we have lots of different ways to exchange ideas using our voices, using the chat, using the Padlet. I'll try to keep an eye on different things, and I hope that Kevin will maybe help me with that too. So, okay. So I'm going to ask you, please, if you don't mind, to raise a hand, either a hand on your camera or a little emoji hand, if you have taught a Hyflex course before. Hi, Maricel, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Okay, Kevin, Maricel, Sharon, Roberta, or Robin. Sorry, Robin. Okay, how about people who've taught more than 3? This is not a competition, I'm just curious. We have lots of experience here. Okay, have any of you taken a Hyflex course? Maricel, you have? 2 people have, that's great. Okay.
Sorry, I left my hand up by accident.
Okay, so Nadia, you are our expert, it looks like, for taking a Hyflex class. You've got the student perspective. And then are any of you planning on teaching a Hyflex class in the future? Yes, Nadia is, okay. Kevin, I'll raise my hand too. So Robin says yes, Kathleen says yes. I won't ask you whether you're doing it voluntarily. I think that, but I do think that Hyflex is here to stay. And so I think it is interesting for us to think about how to make Hyflex work as well as we can. And that's why I wanted to lead this discussion, to learn from all of you. So just to talk briefly about what Hyflex is. So the idea of Hyflex, as we can guess from the name, is to have flexibility and to give options for students. Kevin and I were saying that sometimes students actually have only one or two of those options, or can take advantage of one or two of those options. But theoretically, a student could choose to attend a face-to-face synchronous class, so sort of a traditional in-person kind of class, or Zoom in or use other video conferencing to join the same synchronous class. Or you can also get the information asynchronously in a more traditional online kind of class. And again, the idea is that students can change from one mode to the other. So for example, I had a student who had COVID the first week of class. So you can imagine she joined the class by Zoom, but then when she was feeling better, she came to class in person. So I'm going to just share a little bit of research with you. There's not a lot, and luckily Kevin tells me he's writing a book, so stay tuned. But there is some research that's been done on Hyflex, and just wanted to think about the fact that our teaching and the students' learning takes place in different spaces, physical and virtual spaces, synchronous and asynchronous spaces. That when we're teaching Hyflex, we have to learn how to leverage technology, and the technology has to be there too. So I know that I teach in one particular classroom now because there is a camera and there are microphones that were installed specifically for Hyflex courses. We also, as instructors, and Nadia, I hope you'll tell us a little bit more about your experience as a student, we need to be able to meet the needs of the face-to-face students, the students who are Zooming in, and the online students. And that can be hard. Whenever anybody asks me about teaching on a Hyflex course, I say, well, it's kind of a three-ring circus. And I kind of like three-ring circuses, but it's a lot to balance at one time. And it is our obligation as instructors to provide stimulus and engaging instruction for all of the learners, no matter how they're participating in class. So let me tell you just briefly about my own experience teaching Hyflex. So I teach at Southeast Missouri State University, which is about 2 hours south of St. Louis, so in a fairly small town or small city. And a lot of the courses that I teach are in the Master's in TESOL program. You can complete the Master's in TESOL either 100% online, 100% face-to-face, or a combination. And over the past 2 years, we have made it so all of our in-person on-campus classes are Hyflex. So each semester I teach 2 to 3 different Hyflex courses. I've taught undergrad courses also, but most of them this year have been in the Master's in TESOL. I mentioned that the aim of the Hyflex course is to give students options, but I found in this program, students generally pick one mode and they stick with it. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, I am in a classroom in Cape Girardeau with a student from the United States, a student who speaks Tibetan, a student who speaks Mongolian, a student as their first languages, a student from Iran, a student from Egypt, a student from Saudi Arabia, and a student from Ukraine. So it's a group of students from a variety of countries, as you can see. And then every Monday and Wednesday, I have a student who joins us from Wisconsin, and she joins us on Zoom. And sometimes there's another student who joins us on Zoom. So that's the mix that usually interacts with each other synchronously. And then there are students who only take part in the class as an asynchronous or online class. just a brief parentheses, if you were interested in talking about how to design Hyflex classes, we could talk about that too. What I've been told and what works well for me is to start basically by designing an online class. And then on top of that, plan the synchronous class. So I prepare we use Canvas now. So I could prepare the Canvas. I've got PowerPoints with audio and all sorts of things that I would do normally for an online class. And then in addition, we have synchronous classes. I think something that I'd love to have your input about this is what's complicated is deciding which students should be asked to complete which activities and how to be equitable about that. I've ended up, actually the students who come in person probably do more work than the students who don't, because we do things in class, but for me, it's really important to get everybody in the class in touch with each other to build community. And so I ask everyone to do different activities online. So I'd love to know what you think about that. So as I mentioned, I think Hyflex is here to stay. And I think there's some really powerful, wonderful things about Hyflex. The student who I mentioned who lives in Racine, Wisconsin, she would never come to Cape Girardeau. I had a student who lived in Orange County in California, and she came to classes on Zoom, and she has never been to Cape Girardeau, and I don't think she ever plans to, but she was able to meet students that she wouldn't have interacted with otherwise. And also, just to be really practical, and I was saying to Kevin, I used to be in charge of running a program, so I think about money sometimes, that it allows us to run face-to-face classes that might not run otherwise. And as Kevin was saying, it also allows us to offer classes to people who otherwise would not be able to have classes, who couldn't necessarily come to campus. And it does allow off-campus students to participate synchronously. So I know I have a colleague who is, she coordinates the master's in higher ed, and she has people who work in the admissions office, for example. So sometimes they're able to come to class in person, but sometimes they're off on an admissions trip and they're able to Zoom in. I mentioned the 3-ring circus. This is my 3-ring circus. So you see in the top right-hand corner, that is the image that the students who are Zooming in see. And I am really excited to talk to all of you about how to work with this. I am incredibly frustrated by the fact that the student who's Zooming in gets a really good view of the back of the head of all of the students. So how to incorporate whoever's Zooming in actually in our discussions. And I've tried some different things to do that. This is a student, the person here on the left is in Saudi Arabia. So she joined us for all of our courses on Tuesdays and Thursdays last semester. So she obviously would not have been able to participate in our class if it weren't for Hyflex courses. And you can see here at the bottom, this is one of the students. He's actually from Iran. And we're in the classroom and he's outside and you can see he's on my laptop, because a really important part of teaching for me is getting students into small groups, getting them talking to each other. And so something I've been keep playing with is how to make sure that the students who are on Zoom are interacting with the students who are there in person. So we've tried it with my laptop. Now I have one student where I just look at her and she's like, yep. And she sets up her iPad and she's able to Zoom with some of the other students. But I noticed that I was pairing just the people who are on Zoom with each other. And that's not what I want to do. So I would love to have your ideas too about how to really incorporate the students who are on Zoom into the discussion. I find that I don't know where the microphones are where you teach. Ours are in the ceiling. So I find myself yelling at the ceiling sometimes. And sometimes there'll be a voice that comes sort of godlike from the ceiling when the student who's on Zoom wants to talk to us. So just sort of dealing with all those different logistics. So these are some of the challenges I've faced. The technology and talking to the people who've installed the technology who don't think about teaching in the same way that I do. I think that they might have a more teacher-centered view. So if the camera is pointed on the teacher, that's fine. And that's not how I think about the classroom. These challenges, as I said, how to incorporate the Zoom students into the class. It's been challenging too, because we've been, like you have too, been wearing masks. So we have students who are speaking in their third language and they're wearing masks. And so I keep saying, use your teacher voice. And they're starting to be able to do that. As I said, the breakout rooms, and again, how to create community, how to keep workload equitable. Okay, so you were promised a discussion and I've done too much talking. So what I'm going to ask you to do is this. I'm going to put you in groups and you're going to get to a Google slide that looks like this. So when you get to your group, please choose someone who's going to take notes. So someone who's able to get to the Google slide. Have that person add a slide onto the presentation. So each group will have their own slide. Talk about what you'd like to know or what you want to share about Hyflex, and please put it on the slide. And then we'll all be able to take a look at the slide in about 5 minutes. So this is the same information. Here's a QR code for this slide. I'd be grateful if you're able to get the QR code, please do that now, and then I'll put you in your groups.
And Sarah, if you have the link, we can pop it in the chat in case people don't have a device that can do QR codes.
Absolutely. Got to be equitable here. Okay. Let me just get it. Get the, oops.
If there's a Padlet, can you also put that in the link too, in the chat?
Can you do that, Kevin?
I am on top of it.
He is on it. So what I'm trying to do for all of you is model how complicated it is to have a 3-ring circus. Let's see how I do. All right, here we go. Brainstorm. Yep, here we go. All right, we'll put that in the chat. Oops, come on. Okay, I'll try one more time. Thanks everybody for being patient. I know it's like to be in my class. Okay, here we go. Okay, everybody good? Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, somebody does. That's good. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, as I said, is to put you in breakout rooms, give you about 5 minutes, and then I'm excited to see what you come up with. Thank you, Marcel and Nadia, for your thumbs up. Appreciate it. Okay, let me stop it. Here we go. Okay.
And if the host is the only one that can put people in breakout rooms, just let me know how many people per room you'd like.
Okay. Let's see. Recreate. Let's do it. All right. Have fun. We'll see you soon.
Then the slides are just prompts for your discussion.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that's like, yeah. Exactly.
You won't need to edit them.
No. You don't even need to tell us who did the typing. Anna, Robin, Alyssa, Beth, you okay?
Yeah, I was talking, but I was muted. So
okay.
My question was, your slide says that have one person add a slide to this presentation. So do you need to open up edit access for us?
Perhaps I do. That was a very subtle way of telling me to do it. Thank you. I mean,
thank you. It works better when I'm unmuted.
Okay.
I'll now go to the breakout room.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Actually, can I? Okay.
Sure. What do you need?
I think it should work, but if it doesn't,
okay.
Could you pop back? Could I ask you to be my super spy? Thank you.
You should be able to change permissions even after giving people the link. The link shouldn't change.
Okay, so it should say anyone with a link can access. Does that mean they can edit?
No.
No.
It should say view, comment, or edit.
Okie dokie.
Those would be your three options.
Okay. Nope. Okay, so can you help me, Kevin?
Sure, under the share button at the top right.
Yep.
You guys got
Then
it under control.
see the change in the bottom left there?
Yep.
And then you'll change it from viewer to editor.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And then
Great.
done.
I'll go back to my room now.
Perfect.
Robin, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that's what Lynn was asking as well. So
Okay.
hopefully others, we can send out a message to everybody in the rooms,
Thank
which
you.
I'll do right now.
Okay, people are doing it.
There we go.
Thank you.
Of
I figure
course.
if I'm, modeling, taking risks, I may as well take some risks. Right?
Exactly.
I appreciate your help. Yeah.
And while they're in the breakout rooms, do you want me to pause the recording?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be cool.
Oh my God, can we go back?
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. I was just saying to Kevin that it's always a good sign when the participants don't want to come back. So you don't want to talk to me, huh? Want to talk to each other? That's good. That's great. So first of all, thank you, Robin and Lynn, for letting me know that you weren't able to edit. Thank you, Kevin, for teaching me how to make it possible for you to edit on the Google Slides. And so what I'd like to do right now is I can ask you all to just take a minute and look at the Google Slides, look at what other people wrote, and then we'll open it up and share some questions and experiences. Irina, I hope that you will tell us about your experiences taking classes. It sounds like you have a lot of experience taking classes on Zoom.
Actually, just to clarify, I haven't taken classes. Because of my disability, I have been joining meetings on Zoom since 2016 when everybody else was in the room. But it's a similar experience to what a student would have, and the similar frustrations because, there'd be everybody in one room and me on Zoom and I couldn't hear anybody, or I could hear like half of what was said. And then if I try to say something, nobody can hear, like nobody pays attention.
Like, wait, I'm over here. Exactly.
So I can share a little bit about that. And I think one thing that's really frustrating is the sound is the worst. Like not being able to hear everyone is worse than not being able to see everyone.
Okay.
So I was just curious about what solutions people have found that really catch everybody, like what the teacher is saying, and if a student makes a comment, if there's a discussion, can they hear the other students? I keep saying advertisements for something called OWL, but I've never tried it. And of course, I don't work with them, so I don't know if anyone's tried that and if it's, lives up to the hype or not. I was curious about that. But basically, I think one thing that's really crucial is that whatever is used has a way for you to hear everybody and also be accessible through to students with disabilities and also follow universal design principles. And so, and usually one mic for the whole room is not really sufficient. And then also it has to be like really pick everybody up. So, and then regarding like the student, the instructor reading the text comments in the chat, I think that's helpful. But I think what's frustrating is when everybody's in a room and then some people are on Zoom and the people on Zoom being left out. So I think it's better to have Hyflex only for the classrooms that really have the setup where you can hear everybody, because like might as well, if the student on Zoom is only going to hear half of what's said, like it's not fair to them, like they're wasting their time. They're they're left out. It's not equitable.
Okay, so I've got a thumbs up from Janet, and Anna, you were nodding your head too. Does anybody have some good solutions, some good suggestions for all of us? Oh, Nadia, what do you know someone? Nadia says, oops, what does she say? Have a remote buddy, someone who acts as a tether. I was just about to start class yesterday, and one of my students said, Kim's on Zoom. So she'd gotten a text from the student in Wisconsin, and I knew that she could join us. But so do people have any suggestions as far as microphones go, things that have worked well?
I'd like to add something. I think, we can use the cordless microphones headsets and use them as we're walking around, so that if a student on the other end has a question, if they speak up, you're going to hear them. And if anyone in the classroom says something and the students online can't hear them, you can rephrase what the students said in the classroom to make sure that everyone else that's on the other end is able to hear what's been shared.
And I think that's a good suggestion. I've been trying to do that, and sometimes I don't want to take the voice of whoever's speaking, but let's see. Yeah, challenge with touching the mic during COVID times. There are microphones that you can throw around. That sounds potentially dangerous, but kind of fun. Let's see. Yeah, actually, so Melissa, you're saying that people can also join via Zoom with their phones. Have you had students do that?
I don't know. It's just an idea. If, the people that are face to face, so we're all collaborative and together, they can also join the Zoom links that the persons that are taking them via Zoom. And when they have something to say, not only are they saying it in front of everybody else, but they're also unmuting for those that are not there. It's just an idea. I haven't done it. But.
I was going to say, I think it's a great idea. And I would like to know what I found, that if you have two people on Zoom at the same time, it starts making a horrible noise. So I've had to learn how to mute the teacher's Zoom when other students were Zooming in. But has anybody found sort of a workaround for that?
I've done that in my classrooms. Hi, this is Say. I've done this in my classrooms. I teach software, and so it's very easy for the students to log in on the computers. The hardest part was teaching them to mute their computers and then unmute themselves when speaking. That was the hardest part. But honestly, I'm not standing right next to the students when they were doing this, so there wasn't a lot of feedback. But even when I started out super low tech, and I used my phone as the microphone because we didn't have a microphone in the classroom. But I do know that it can be done. It just takes a little bit of training at first.
Training of the students, or?
Yes, and teachers, come on.
I was going to say the students have been training me basically, so.
You just got to teach them how to turn on and off their microphones. Otherwise there's just too much echo and feedback, like you said.
I also had someone who, I'm sorry, Marcel has their hand up.
Oh, no, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to echo that that I do know some faculty who did that as well. They had all the students log in because they really wanted to make sure, again, that if they put people in breakout rooms, that there could be some people virtually in a breakout room and the students in the class in the same breakout room, because Hyflex is really supposed to be about like one seamless course, regardless of how you log in or how you get there. And so anyway, that was some of the stuff that they were trying to do.
Right. Marcel, what were you going to say?
Just a small point, small but maybe important. I realized you need to actually ask student permission to capture their video and then post to their course, post to your course, even though it's course, you know, it's within a course, they have to log in into a course management system. I had some students tell me, I came to class because I didn't want to deal with this. And fair enough, I thought that was pretty legit. And so just be mindful, like maybe there's a part of the room that never gets videotaped, never recorded, because that's what students showed up for. It was just a good discussion to have with the class early on.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, personally, I've been really hesitant about recording for a couple of reasons. One, it requires a lot of running back and forth, and is the recording on, and if it's not on when we're in breakout rooms. But also, I've had mixed feelings, yeah, that I want to encourage the students who are in the classroom who get to know each other well and feel comfortable talking about things. I mean, you can imagine, for example, with students who speak Tibetan and students who speak Mongolian, they're sharing things with us that they might not want broadcast or recorded or heard by people that they don't know. So it's complicated. I am amazed by how fast the time has gone. What are some other things that you came up in your groups that you would really like to make sure that we talk about?
Question in the chat, Greg asks, aren't there still attendance requirements with Hyflex to engage students in active learning? Do some classes simply let students watch the recording later?
I know my own experience, but how about other people? What's the policy?
Well, like I have a Zoom class, it's not Hyflex, but I do have a policy that students get the same credit if they listen to the recording as if they attend synchronously. But the way that we keep track of it is we have something called a 3-minute paper that all students do after the class and after watching the Zoom recording, whether they're synchronous or listen to it later. And they talk about the most important thing they learned in the class and any unanswered questions. And so this kind of helps us, first of all, as teachers, to kind of learn what's really impacting students, what's positive, what they still, need some clarification on. And then also it helps us know, how people are participating, because, then we give them credit for attendance if they do a 3-minute paper on that, because then we know they listened to the Zoom recording.
Does anybody else have suggestions of how you've managed that? So 3-minute paper, Robin says. Somebody else said something in the chat. Okay. I would say, so from my own experience, I've been told very clearly that we're not allowed to take attendance in Hyflex classes. And there's one student who I think it would have been really helpful if I could have said, you have to come to class. I've also heard some interesting things about what the law is, and I'm not sure if anybody knows, for international students, that they're supposed to come to a Hyflex class and be in class once a week. I don't know if that's right. It may not be the law right now. And I also have colleagues who I will not name, who basically would punish students if they didn't come in person. So they had to do more work if they didn't come in person. And that was the way of sort of strong-arming the students into coming in person. So, which obviously would not work for my student who's in Saudi Arabia. But what's another topic that you were interested in discussing?
I initially thought that Hyflex was a very specific thing, where it was, like a certain setup. But the more I learned about it, the more I found out that it's really amorphous and varies hugely. And do you know if there's any effort to make it to really kind of define boundaries and make it a much more kind of concrete term, a term that can that includes elements that ensure that quality of access that we're talking about.
That's really interesting. I'm going to, so just wanted to touch on something that was in the slides and then actually ask Kevin to answer this question because I think he's more expert than I am on it. Somebody talked about in the chat about academic technology working with instructors, and I think that's vital. And again, I started doing that and I ran out of energy, and I need to talk more to people about how I view what a classroom should look like. And again, to align what the technology is able to do so that it is addressing the kinds of opportunities that I would like to give students, but also, as you're saying, Julie, addressing issues of equity. Kevin, do you mind telling us if?
Sure. So Hyflex, when it was first introduced by Brian Beatty from San Francisco State, had 4 core principles underlying it, namely that there's an element of learner choice on how they participate in each class meeting, that the class experiences are equivalent regardless of which channel they pick, that the course materials are reusable in different ways, and that they're accessible. Lately, because of actually even before the pandemic, it began getting redefined locally at different campuses that didn't want to have the student choice or didn't want to have some other aspect of it. And so they've even been renaming it with campus names, like Cal State Chico calls it ChicoFlex. And so what I've been doing is just calling it flexible course experiences, where instead of a hybrid class where we might alternate, we're online to this class session, we're in person the next. Now we're looking at time and space, where we're combining, maybe some campuses call it bisynchronous, where you can be asynchronous and then remote, but nobody ever goes to a classroom. And other is called co-synchronous, where you're in the classroom or on Zoom, but there's no recording. And so you have these different combinations of time and space that I'm calling flexible course delivery, to allow for a kind of a broader superset than trying to capture all the dandelion seeds that are being blown all around the world.
Thank you. Welcome, Didem. Somebody asked about about compensation. I'm assuming that's a rhetorical question about whether we get paid for all the extra work. Nope, I certainly haven't been, although I think that maybe some campuses have. The other thing I was saying to Didem, who just arrived, was she was saying, oh, I'm getting some training about Hyflex. And I said, wow, that's a really good idea. So I know that we were sort of just thrown into it. Somebody mentioned the students being able to watch the video again. I mentioned that the way I do an online course, I'll have PowerPoints where I have audio recorded. And so I do find that a number of students who attend synchronously will also look at those PowerPoints. They'll watch them ahead of time, and that works. So they're getting the information twice in some ways. And particularly for the students who are working in their second and third language, that really works well.
So this has been a great conversation, but unfortunately we are at the end of our time. So I will encourage everyone to go to the Padlet for this session and keep this conversation going. And I'll put that in the chat in just a second. I'll also ask that we all thank Sarah for a fantastic conversation, which was very active, both in the breakout rooms and here in the large room. So Sarah, thank you for sharing your experiences and getting us together to talk about the benefits and the challenges. And then as people do that, thank you. I'll tell everybody that I will be turning off the recording in just a second, and we'll be back in 10 minutes with our next session. So we encourage you all to rejoin us after a brief bio break, a jog around the block, a trip to get some water or tea or coffee. And then depending on where you are in the world, it might be a different beverage, right? Water, juice. Anyway, we're grateful to have you all here. And Sarah, thanks again for a fantastic session.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Kevin. Thank you to my friend and colleague, Didemi Kichi, for putting together this amazing opportunity and for telling me about it. And Maricel, nice to see you again. So somebody I used to work with in Massachusetts. So thank you all. I really learned a lot from you and look forward to continuing to be in touch if you're open to that. Thank you.